Commander Zephyr Thak had witnessed the fall of 17 civilizations. His crystalline exoskeleton bore the scars of 1,000 battles, each one a testament to the hegemony's relentless expansion across the galaxy. The insectoid warrior stood nearly 3 meters tall, his 4 arms capable of wielding weapons that could level city blocks. Yet today, as he observed the small human delegation boarding his flagship, something felt different. The humans were tiny compared to most spacefaring species. Their delegation consisted of just 5 individuals, led by someone they called Admiral Sarah Chun. She barely reached Zephyr Thak's thorax, her skin a pale pink color that seemed impossibly fragile. No natural armor, no visible weapons, no enhanced limbs or cybernetic implants. They looked like children pretending to be soldiers. Admiral Chun. Zephyr Thak clicked in the common trade language, his mandibles creating the harsh consonants that most species found intimidating. Welcome aboard the Devastation's Edge. I trust your journey was comfortable. The human admiral looked up at him with those strange, small eyes. Unlike the compound eyes of his species or the heat-sensing organs of the thermal lords, human eyes seemed almost primitive. Yet something in her gaze made him pause. There was no fear there, no submission. Just a calm assessment that reminded him uncomfortably of a predator sizing up prey. Thank you, Commander, she replied in perfect hegemony standard. Her voice was soft, almost musical, lacking the threatening harmonics that proper warriors should possess. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss terms. Zephyr Thak led them through the corridors of his dreadnought. The ship was a monument to hegemony engineering, its walls lined with trophies from conquered worlds. Weapons, art, and preserved specimens from dozens of extinct species served as reminders of the price of resistance. Most delegations found the display appropriately intimidating. The humans showed no reaction whatsoever. They passed through the Hall of Submission, where the surrender documents of entire civilizations were displayed in climate-controlled cases. The Veltar Accord, signed after their homeworld, was glass from orbit. The Kytherian Capitulation, negotiated after the hegemony, demonstrated the ability to manipulate their sun. Treaties written in blood, tears, and the ashes of dead worlds. Admiral Chun paused briefly at one display case. The Arcturus Concession, she read aloud. Interesting calligraphy. The Arcturians had a beautiful written language. Had Zephyr Thak emphasized, they were difficult to integrate into the hegemony. Their stubbornness required correction. I see. Chun moved on without another word. In the war room, Zephyr Thak activated the massive holographic display. Star charts filled the air above them, showing the current state of hegemony space. Red zones marked conquered territories, blue indicated current military operations, and yellow showed worlds marked for future acquisition. It was an impressive sight, designed to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Behold the might of the hegemony, Zephyr Thak announced, gesturing with all 4 arms at the display. We control 17% of this galaxy's inhabited systems. Our fleets number in the millions. Our ground forces are beyond counting. For 3,000 years, we have brought order to chaos, unity to division. Admiral Chun studied the display with professional interest. Impressive logistics network. The supply lines alone must require significant coordination. She pointed to a cluster of systems. This region here, the spiral campaigns. How long did that take to pacify? 87 years. And the casualty figures? Zephyr Thak's mandibles clicked with pride. Total enemy losses numbered approximately 4 billion. Hegemony casualties were minimal. I meant your casualties, Chun said quietly. For a moment, Zephyr Thak was taken aback. No one ever asked about hegemony losses. They were so minimal as to be irrelevant. Perhaps 50,000 over the entire campaign. 50,000 soldiers, Chun repeated, making notes on a small device. Against 4 billion defenders. That's quite a ratio. It demonstrates our superiority, Zephyr Thak said, though something in her tone made the words feel less triumphant than usual. The human admiral nodded slowly. It demonstrates something, certainly. She looked up from her device. Commander, may I ask you a personal question? This was unusual. Conquered species rarely showed interest in their conquerors beyond the immediate terms of surrender. Speak. Have you ever been afraid? The question was so unexpected that Zephyr Thak's translator struggled with it. Fear was not a concept that applied to hegemony warriors. They were genetically engineered for courage, psychologically conditioned for aggression, chemically enhanced for fearlessness. Fear was for prey species, for the conquered, for the weak. I do not understand the question, he replied. Fear, Chen repeated. That feeling when you realize you might lose something important. When you face an enemy that might actually defeat you. When death becomes not just possible, but probable. Zephyr Thak's forearms spread in a dismissive gesture. Hegemony warriors know no fear. We are bred for victory, trained for domination. Fear is a weakness we have evolved beyond. How interesting, Chun said, making another note. So you never faced an enemy that gave you pause? Never encountered a situation where victory wasn't certain? The commander thought back through centuries of warfare. The Veltar had been stubborn, but ultimately helpless once their orbital defenses fell. The Kytherians had clever technology, but no understanding of real warfare. The Arcturians had been fierce individual fighters, but lacked strategic thinking. In every case, the outcome had been predetermined from the moment hegemony forces arrived. Never, he said with certainty. That must be nice, Admiral Chen said. In human history, we've known fear quite well. It's been our constant companion, actually. Fear of hunger, fear of predators, fear of disease, fear of each other. Some say it's what made us what we are. And what are you? Zephyr Thak asked, genuinely curious now. Chen's smile was small and didn't reach her eyes. That's what we're here to discuss. The human delegation spent the next several hours reviewing the standard terms of surrender. Zephyr Thak had presided over countless such meetings. The pattern was always the same. Initial denial, desperate negotiation, grudging acceptance, and, finally, the formal signing of submission documents. Species that cooperated were allowed to maintain some autonomy under hegemony oversight. Those that resisted were pacified by force. But the humans were different. They asked questions that no one had ever asked before. They wanted to know about hegemony industrial capacity, military doctrine, command structure, and logistical capabilities. They inquired about casualty rates, resource allocation, and strategic planning cycles. It was as if they were studying the hegemony rather than surrendering to it. These are unusual concerns for a surrendering species, Zephyr Thak finally said. Who said anything about surrendering? Admiral Chen asked. The words hung in the air like a challenge. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to hegemony demands with anything but eventual submission. Some took longer than others, but all eventually bowed to the inevitable. You cannot seriously be considering resistance, Zephyr Thak said. Your species controls exactly 14 systems. You have no significant military fleet, no advanced weapons technology, no strategic advantages. We have analyzed your capabilities thoroughly. Have you? Chen asked. That's good to hear. What did your analysis conclude? Zephyr Thak activated another display, this one showing the human sphere of influence. It was pathetically small compared to hegemony space, a tiny cluster of worlds barely worth noticing on a galactic scale. Humans are a young species, only recently achieving interstellar travel. He began his standard briefing. Your technology is primitive, your military organization is fragmented, and your population is small. Your worlds lack significant strategic resources, and your industrial base is negligible. In short, you represent neither a threat nor a particularly valuable addition to the hegemony. Then, why are we having this meeting? Chen asked. Standard protocol requires us to offer terms before commencing pacification operations. It is efficient. Chen nodded. So, this is actually a formality. You've already decided to conquer us regardless of what we say here. Correct. And you believe it will be easy. Trivial. Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment, studying the star charts with those strange human eyes. When she finally spoke, her voice carried something new, something that made Zephyr Thak's genetic modifications suddenly feel inadequate. Commander, you mentioned that fear has been humanity's constant companion throughout our history. That's true. We've been afraid of so many things for so long that we've developed some rather unique coping mechanisms. She gestured to the display. You see weakness where you look at human space. Small numbers, limited technology, fragmented organization. But you're looking at the wrong things. Enlighten me, Zephyr Thak said, though he was beginning to wish he hadn't asked. When humans are afraid, really afraid, we don't run or hide or surrender. We adapt. We improvise. We find ways to turn our disadvantages into advantages. Chin's smile returned, but it was different now. Sharper. And when we're backed into a corner with no way out, we do something that apparently no one else in this galaxy has ever thought to do, which is, we cheat. Before Zephyr could respond to this cryptic statement, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. His tactical officer's voice crackled over the communication system. Commander, we have a situation. All hegemony fleets in Sector 7 have gone dark. No response to communications, no telemetry data, nothing. Zephyr mind raced. Sector 7 contained 3 full battle groups, over 200 ships, and nearly 1 million hegemony personnel. Ships and personnel didn't simply go dark. What was our last known position? He demanded. The Kepler Nebula, sir. They were conducting standard patrol operations. Admiral Chen stood up slowly. Commander, I believe this meeting is concluded. My people will be returning to our ship now. You will remain here until this situation is resolved. Zephyr ordered, his warrior instincts finally kicking in. I'm afraid that's not possible, Chen replied. You see, we have other appointments to keep. Other hegemony forces to meet. Other forces? Did I mention the humans are very good at multitasking? While we've been having this lovely chat, my colleagues have been having similar conversations with your commanders in, about 40 other sectors. The implications hit Zephyr like a physical blow. 40 sectors. Thousands of ships. Millions of personnel. The scale was impossible, unthinkable. What have you done? He whispered. We've introduced ourselves, Chen said simply. Properly. More alarms were blaring now. Reports flooded in from across hegemony space. Fleets disappearing, communications disrupted, supply lines severed. In a matter of hours, centuries of careful expansion and consolidation were being systematically dismantled. This is impossible, Zephyr said. You don't have the resources, the technology, the capability. You're right, Chen agreed. We don't. But you do. She moved to the tactical display and input a series of commands. The star chart changed, showing new data that made Zephyr I-Core run cold. Human ships, thousands of them, were spread throughout hegemony space. But they weren't human designs. They were hegemony vessels, flying human identification codes. How he managed. 3 years ago, your advanced scouts made contact with human explorers in the Vega system, Chen explained calmly. Standard first contact protocols. Your people were very thorough in their analysis of our capabilities. Very professional. Yes, I reviewed those reports myself. What you didn't know is that we were analyzing you at the same time, learning your languages, studying your technology, understanding your psychology. Your scouts were so confident in their superiority that they never thought to hide anything. Why would they? We were just another primitive species to be cataloged and eventually conquered. Chen moved closer to the display. But humans have a saying, knowledge is power. And you gave us all the knowledge we needed. Zephyr watched in growing horror as the display updated with new information. Human agents had infiltrated hegemony space years ago, posing as members of conquered species. They had studied hegemony technology, learned their tactics, identified their weaknesses, and then they had struck simultaneously across hundreds of systems. Your fleets aren't destroyed, Commander, Chen said. They've been captured. Your crews are alive and unharmed, but their ships now serve the human cause. Your strategic installations are intact, but under new management. Your supply networks continue to function, but they're feeding our operations instead of yours. That's impossible, Zephyr repeated, but even as he said it, he knew it was true. The evidence was overwhelming. Is it? Your people have been so successful for so long that you forgot the most basic rule of warfare. Never underestimate your enemy. Chen's expression was serious now. You see, Commander, we humans learned something important during our climb to the stars. The biggest predator doesn't always win. Sometimes the smallest, smartest, most adaptable creature finds a way to bring down giants. The flagship shuddered as its engines suddenly shut down. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. My ship, Zephyr said. What have you done to my ship? Your crew is fine, Chen assured him. But the devastation's edge is now under human control, as is most of your fleet, actually. Through the viewport, Zephyr could see other hegemony vessels. Their running lights had changed color, broadcasting the new human identification codes. His mighty fleet, the pride of hegemony military engineering, had been turned against him in a matter of hours. For the first time in his long life, Zephyr understood what Admiral Chen had been talking about. The cold sensation spreading through his thorax, the sudden uncertainty about the future, the realization that everything he had believed about his own superiority might be wrong. This was fear. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The same thing the hegemony has always wanted," Chen replied. "Peace. Order. Unity. We just have different ideas about how to achieve it." She moved toward the door, her human delegation following. "Your people will be treated well, Commander. We're not conquerors. We don't believe in ruling over others. But we won't be conquered either." "This cannot stand," Zephyr said, though his words lacked conviction. "The hegemony will not accept this. There will be retaliation." Admiral Chen paused at the doorway. "With what?" "We now control 60% of your fleet, 70% of your industrial capacity, and all of your critical supply routes. More importantly, we've just demonstrated that the mighty hegemony can be defeated by a primitive species using nothing but careful planning and superior tactics." She looked back at him one last time. "The other member species of your empire are going to start asking some very interesting questions, Commander. Questions about whether they really need the hegemony's protection after all." And then she was gone, leaving Zephyr alone with his fear and the growing realization that everything had changed. The age of hegemony dominance was ending, not with a battle or a siege, but with a simple demonstration that they were not invincible. Outside, human-controlled ships began broadcasting messages across all frequencies. Not threats or demands, but invitations. Invitations to a new kind of galactic order, one based on cooperation rather than conquest, on mutual benefit rather than subjugation. Zephyr finally understood what Admiral Chen had meant about humans and fear. They had lived with it so long that they had learned not just to overcome it, but to use it as a weapon. And now, for the first time in 3,000 years, the hegemony knew what it felt like to be afraid. The revolution had begun. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of what had once been the hegemony fortress world of Kepler Prime. The massive space station orbited the gas giant's largest moon, a symbol of imperial power that had dominated this sector for over 4 centuries. Now it flew human colors, its weapons systems reprogrammed to serve a very different purpose. "Status report," she requested as she approached the central holographic display. Captain Torres looked up from his console. "The transition is proceeding ahead of schedule, Admiral. We've successfully integrated 47 hegemony vessels into our fleet structure. Their crews are cooperating fully once they understand we're not executing prisoners. Any resistance? Minimal. Most of the hegemony forces seem genuinely confused by our approach. They're trained to expect brutality from conquerors, not reasonable treatment." Chen nodded. That had been one of humanity's key insights during their 3-year intelligence operation. The hegemony ruled through fear and overwhelming force, but they had never encountered an enemy that didn't play by the same rules. When humans captured hegemony personnel, they provided medical care, comfortable quarters, and actually listened to their concerns. It was a radical departure from thousands of years of galactic warfare. "What about the civilian populations on the conquered worlds?" she asked. "That's where things get interesting," Torres replied, manipulating the display to show several star systems. "Word is spreading faster than our communications can reach. The Veltar Confederacy has formally withdrawn from the hegemony and declared independence. The Kytherian worlds are holding emergency councils. Even some of the core hegemony species are questioning their allegiance." The display showed cascading changes across the galaxy. Independence movements that had been suppressed for centuries were suddenly springing back to life. Species that had forgotten they were once free were remembering their lost heritage. The carefully constructed edifice of hegemony control was cracking along fault lines that had been hidden for millennia. "Sir," called Lieutenant Park from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Hassan. Put him through." Admiral Hassan's weathered face appeared in a smaller hologram. Despite the obvious exhaustion in his features, he was smiling. "Sarah, I have to say, when you proposed this operation 3 years ago, I thought you were completely insane." "You weren't the only one," Chen replied. "I take it the home fleet operations were successful. Beyond our wildest expectations. We've secured the entire hegemony Third Fleet along with their command structure. More importantly, we've captured intact their entire strategic database. Sarah, We now have complete intelligence on every hegemony military asset, every classified operation, every secret treaty. It's like they handed us the keys to their empire. Chun felt a mixture of satisfaction and unease. The operation was succeeding far better than even their most optimistic projections. Perhaps too well. Any word from the infiltration teams? She asked. Hassan's expression grew more serious. That's the complicated part. Agent Williams reports that the Hegemony High Command is in complete chaos. Half of them want to negotiate, the other half are calling for total war. But here's the thing that's got me worried. Some of the elder commanders are talking about something called the Final Protocol. Final Protocol? Williams couldn't get details, but apparently it's some kind of ultimate contingency plan. Something they've never used in 3,000 years of conquest because it's considered too extreme, even for the hegemony. Chun felt a chill. The hegemony had glassed entire worlds, wiped out billions of civilians, and systematically destroyed countless civilizations. What could they consider too extreme? Tell Williams to maintain his cover, but gather any intelligence he can on this final protocol, she ordered. And Hassan? Start preparing defensive positions around Earth and the core human worlds. Something tells me we haven't seen the end of this yet. The communication ended, leaving Chun alone with her thoughts. Around her, the command center bustled with activity as human and former hegemony personnel worked together to coordinate the ongoing operation. The transition was remarkably smooth, aided by the fact that many hegemony soldiers had never actually wanted to be conquerors in the first place. She moved to another station where Dr. Elizabeth Warren, humanity's leading xenopsychologist, was analyzing data from interviews with captured hegemony personnel. What have we learned about our new friends, Doctor? Chun asked. Warren looked up from her screens, her expression troubled. It's fascinating and horrifying at the same time, Admiral. The hegemony doesn't just conquer species. They psychologically condition them over generations to believe that conquest is natural and inevitable. Many of these soldiers genuinely thought they were bringing civilization to primitive worlds. Are you saying they believe they're the good guys? In their own minds, absolutely. They've been raised from birth to see themselves as the rightful rulers of the galaxy. But here's what's interesting. When we show them alternative perspectives, when we demonstrate that cooperation can be more effective than conquest, many of them adapt remarkably quickly. Chun studied the psychological profiles on Warren screens. What about their leadership? The ones making the decisions. That's where it gets complicated. The middle ranks are mostly just following orders, but the upper echelons, they're true believers. And some of them show signs of significant psychological instability when their worldview is challenged. Meaning they might do something desperate rather than accept that they've been wrong for 3,000 years. Chun was about to respond when alarms began sounding throughout the command center. She rushed back to the main display where Captain Torres was coordinating with multiple incoming reports. Admiral, we've got a problem, Torres said. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from the hegemony core worlds. Whatever they're doing, it's drawing power on a scale we've never seen before. The display shifted to show the heart of hegemony space. At the center was Dominion, the capital world where the High Command ruled over their vast empire. Energy readings from the system were off the charts, far beyond anything required for normal operations. Could they be preparing some kind of superweapon? Chun asked. Unknown. The energy patterns don't match any known weapon signatures in our database. Chen's mind raced through possibilities. The hegemony had always relied on conventional military force. They had never needed superweapons because their standard fleets were more than sufficient to crush any opposition. For them to be drawing this much power suggested something unprecedented. Ma'am, called another operator. We're receiving scattered transmissions from hegemony space. It sounds like they're implementing some kind of general recall. All fleets, all personnel, everything is being ordered back to the core worlds. A defensive consolidation? Chun wondered aloud. Or preparation for something else, Torres suggested grimly. The next few hours brought increasingly ominous developments. The hegemony was abandoning outlying territories, pulling back their forces, and drawing massive amounts of energy from their industrial infrastructure. Most disturbing of all, they had ceased all communications with the outside galaxy. For a civilization that had broadcast its dominance across the stars for millennia, the sudden silence was deeply unsettling. Chun was reviewing tactical reports when Dr. Warren approached with a new piece of intelligence that made her blood run cold. Admiral, I've been analyzing historical records from some of the older conquered species. There are references, ancient legends really, about something called the burning of stars. According to these stories, the hegemony's ancestors once possessed weapons capable of destroying entire solar systems. Legends and stories, Doctor, probably exaggerated over time. I thought so too, until I cross-referenced with the energy signatures we're detecting. Admiral, the power requirements match theoretical calculations for stellar manipulation technology. Chun stared at the data. Stellar manipulation meant exactly what it sounded like. The ability to affect stars themselves, to make them burn brighter, dimmer, or even go nova. It was the stuff of science fiction, far beyond current understanding of physics. Are you telling me the hegemony can destroy stars? She asked. I'm saying the evidence suggests they might have that capability, and based on current energy readings, they might be preparing to use it. The implications were staggering. If the hegemony could destroy stars, they could wipe out entire systems with a single weapon. Not just the planets, but everything in those systems, ships, stations, populations, everything. It would be genocide on a scale that defied comprehension. But why would they use such a weapon now? Chen asked. They're losing, yes, but it's not like we're threatening their core worlds. They could retreat, regroup, try again later. Warren's expression was grim. Because, Admiral, we've done something no one has ever done before. We've proven they can be beaten. For 3,000 years, the hegemony has based its entire identity on being invincible. We've shattered that myth. So they're willing to commit cosmic genocide rather than admit they can lose? I think they'd rather destroy the galaxy than rule over a universe where they're not supreme. Chun felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. The human operation had been designed to liberate the galaxy from hegemony tyranny, but instead it might have triggered something far worse. If the hegemony was preparing to use stellar destruction weapons, the death toll could be in the trillions. Captain Torres, she called. How quickly can we get word to the other human task forces? Using captured hegemony communications networks? About 6 hours to reach everyone. Do it. Tell them to accelerate their operations. If we're right about what the hegemony is planning, we need to capture or neutralize as much of their infrastructure as possible before they can implement it. What about Earth? Torres asked. Should we warn them to prepare for evacuation? Chen looked at the energy readings from Dominion, watching as they climbed steadily higher. If the hegemony really was preparing to destroy stars, Earth would be an obvious target. Humanity's home system would send a message that resistance was futile, send a warning to Earth, but tell them not to panic the population yet. We still don't know exactly what we're dealing with. But even as she said it, Chen knew they were running out of time. The energy signatures were approaching critical thresholds, and intelligence reports suggested the hegemony was moving into their final preparation phases. Whatever the final protocol was, it would be implemented soon. Agent Williams' next report confirmed her worst fears. The message was brief and encrypted, transmitted from deep within hegemony space. Final protocol confirmed. Stellar ignition weapons active. Target list includes Earth, Veltar Prime, and 17 other rebel systems. Estimated deployment in 72 hours. Plan to cause supernovas in targeted stars, making rebellion irrelevant by removing rebels from existence. Chun stood in the command center, surrounded by the fruits of humanity's greatest military victory, and realized they had won a battle only to trigger an apocalypse. The hegemony was preparing to murder entire star systems rather than face the possibility of defeat. For the first time since the operation began, Admiral Chun truly understood what it meant to be afraid. Not afraid for herself, but afraid for every living being in the galaxy. They had awakened something terrible, and now they had 72 hours to find a way to stop it. The clock was ticking, and the stakes had just become the survival of everything they were trying to save. Agent Marcus Williams crouched in the maintenance shaft above the hegemony high command chamber, his enhanced hearing picking up every word of the most consequential conversation in galactic history. Through the fiber optic periscope, he could see the 9 members of the Supreme Council gathered around a table carved from a single piece of crystallized space-time, a material so rare that only 3 samples existed in the known galaxy. Supreme Overlord Carthex dominated the gathering despite being seated. His species, the Zephyrians, were the original founders of the hegemony, and their representative had held ultimate authority for over 2 millennia. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, even when seated, his obsidian carapace reflected the chamber's amber lighting like dark mirrors. The situation is untenable, Overlord Vashti was saying, her serpentine form coiled in frustration. Half our fleet has turned against us, our outer territories are in revolt, and these humans have made our military doctrine obsolete in a matter of days. They have done more than that, rumbled Council Member Thekmore, his massive frame casting shadows across the table. They have made us look foolish. 3,000 years of conquest, and a species barely out of their own solar system makes us appear weak. Williams adjusted his recording equipment. Everything being said here would be transmitted to Admiral Chun, but the encryption and transmission delay meant she wouldn't receive this intelligence for several hours. Whatever decisions were made in this room would be implemented before Earth even knew about them. Supreme Overlord Carthex raised one of his 6 arms for silence. The final protocol was created by our ancestors for exactly this situation. When conventional warfare fails, when our dominance is threatened, when the very foundation of our empire faces collapse. But the cost, whispered Council Member Indar, her crystalline features literally transparent with fear. 17 star systems. Trillions of lives. We would be remembered as the greatest mass murderers in galactic history. We would be remembered as the civilization that maintained order when chaos threatened to consume everything, Carthex corrected. The deaths will be regrettable, but necessary. Better 17 systems die than the entire galaxy descend into the barbarism that preceded our rule. Williams felt sick. He had infiltrated the hegemony 3 years ago, posing as a mid-level administrator from a conquered species. The psychological conditioning required to maintain his cover had been brutal. Monthly sessions with human psychiatrists to prevent him from actually adopting hegemony beliefs. Now he understood why those precautions had been necessary. The stellar ignition devices are nearly ready, reported Councilmember Jexlin, her voice emotionless despite discussing weapons of unimaginable destruction. Our technicians estimate 18 hours until full deployment capability. And the targets? Asked Carthex. Earth, obviously. The human homeworld must be made an example. Veltar Prime and Kytherian Central to demonstrate what happens to species that rebel. The other 14 systems were chosen for maximum psychological impact on remaining territories. Williams coded the information into his neural implant. 18 hours, not 72. The timeline had accelerated dramatically. Admiral Chen needed to know immediately, but transmitting from inside Hegemony High Command was almost impossible. The security measures would detect any unauthorized signal. There is another matter, Council Member Darkon said, his voice carrying an odd harmonic that indicated uncertainty. Our intelligence suggests the humans may have anticipated this possibility. The chamber fell silent. Carthex's eyes, all 12 of them, focused on Darkon with frightening intensity. Explain. Their capture personnel have been unusually cooperative. Too cooperative. And their questions during interrogation have focused heavily on our historical archives, ancient technologies, and theoretical weapons research. You suspect they knew about the final protocol? I suspect they suspected, yes. The way they targeted our fleets, the speed of their operation, the simultaneous nature of their strikes, it suggests they were trying to prevent us from implementing something specific. Vashti's serpentine form writhed with agitation. If they knew, why didn't they target the stellar ignition facilities directly? Perhaps they don't know where they are, suggested Thekmore. Or perhaps, Carthex said slowly, they have a different plan. Williams felt a chill of dread. The Supreme Overlord had not survived 2 millennia of political intrigue by being naive. If he suspected the humans had a counter-strategy, it probably meant they did. Regardless, Carthex continued. We proceed with the final protocol. The stellar ignition weapons will be deployed in 18 hours. I want all hegemony forces withdrawn for the target systems immediately. What about our personnel who cannot be evacuated in time? Asked Indar. The silence that followed was answer enough. Williams began crawling backwards through the maintenance shaft. He had to get this information out, but the security measures around High Command were absolute. Every communication was monitored, every signal traced, every data stream analyzed. The only way to get word to Admiral Chun would be to physically leave the facility and use the emergency beacon hidden in his quarters. It would mean blowing his cover ending 3 years of careful infiltration and probably getting himself killed. But 17-star systems hung in the balance. He was halfway to the exit when alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Security breach in high command, announced the automated system. All personnel report to stations immediately. Williams froze. Had they detected him? Was his cover blown? Through the thin walls of the maintenance shaft, he could hear the rapid deployment of security forces, the hum of scanners, the bark of orders in a dozen different hegemony languages. Then, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Agent Williams. Carthex's voice echoed through the facility's communication system. Please report to the High Command Chamber. Your expertise is required for a special assignment. They knew. Somehow, despite all his precautions, despite 3 years of perfect cover, they had identified him as a human operative. Williams reached for the emergency beacon hidden in his equipment belt, but hesitated. Once he activated it, there would be no going back. His position inside Hegemony Command would be lost forever. But, as he listened to security forces converging on his position, he realized that position was already compromised. Williams activated the beacon. The emergency signal burst outward from his location, a concentrated data package that would reach Admiral Chun in 6 hours. Everything he had learned about the final protocol, the 18-hour timeline, the target systems, and the hegemony's suspicions about human counter-strategies. He didn't live to see if the message was received. 6 hours later, Admiral Chun received the transmission while coordinating operations from the captured hegemony fortress. Williams' final report painted a picture of approaching catastrophe that made their current victories seem meaningless. 17 star systems marked for annihilation, weapons capable of destroying suns, and a timeline that had shrunk to just 12 hours. Options, she demanded. Her command staff gathered around the tactical display. We could attempt to evacuate the target systems, suggested Captain Torres. With the captured hegemony transports, we might be able to save a significant portion of the populations. Not in 12 hours, Dr. Warren interjected. It would take days just to organize an evacuation of that scale. And evacuate them to where? If the hegemony can destroy stars, they could destroy any system we move people to. What about a direct assault on their stellar weapons? Asked another officer. We don't know where they are, Chin replied. Williams died before he could get us that information. The command center fell quiet as the magnitude of the situation settled over them. 12 hours to prevent the greatest act of genocide in galactic history, and they had no idea how to do it. Admiral, called Lieutenant Park from communications. I'm receiving a priority signal from Earth. It's Director Hayes. The Director of Human Intelligence appeared in the holographic display, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks of strain. Sarah, we received Williams' final transmission. I'm sorry about the loss of our operative, but his information has allowed us to activate something we hoped we'd never need to use. What are you talking about? 3 years ago, when we first learned about the hegemony, we didn't just send infiltrators to study their military capabilities. We sent specialists to study their history, their technology, their deepest secrets. What we found buried in their own ancient archives was disturbing. Hayes paused, and Chun could see the weight of whatever he was about to reveal. Sarah, the stellar ignition weapons aren't hegemony technology. They're older, much older. They belong to a species that predated the hegemony by millions of years. The hegemony found them, learned to use them, but never fully understood how they work. What does that mean for us? It means we've had our best xenoarchaeologists and theoretical physicists studying these weapons for 3 years, and we think we've found a weakness. Chun felt a spark of hope. What kind of weakness? The stellar ignition process requires a specific quantum resonance frequency to trigger solar instability. But the same frequency, if inverted and broadcast at sufficient power, should theoretically neutralize the ignition effect. Should theoretically? We've never tested it, Sarah. The power requirements are enormous. And if we're wrong, we might accidentally trigger the exact stellar ignitions we're trying to prevent. Shin looked at the countdown timer on her display. 11 hours and 47 minutes. What would we need to implement this counter-frequency? Every available power source in human space, plus the industrial capacity we've captured from the hegemony. We'd have to coordinate a galaxy-wide broadcast array using equipment that was never designed to work together. And we'd have exactly one chance to get it right. The silence stretched as Chun weighed the impossible choice. attempt an untested countermeasure that might accidentally trigger the catastrophe they were trying to prevent, or watch helplessly as 17 star systems burned. Director, how long would this frequency broadcast need to maintain power? Our calculations suggest a minimum of 6 hours to ensure the ignition devices are permanently neutralized. 6 hours of sustained power drain across multiple star systems, using technology that might not even work. The margin for error was virtually non-existent. Admiral, Captain Torres said quietly, there's something else. If we commit to this plan, we'll have to reveal every hidden asset we have, every secret base, every covert installation. The power requirements mean we can't hold anything in reserve. Meaning if this fails, we'll have exposed everything. The hegemony will know exactly where to find us, and we'll have no hidden resources left to continue the resistance. Chen stared at the star charts, showing the 17 target systems. Trillions of lives hung in the balance, including everyone on Earth. But the choice wasn't just about saving those lives. It was about risking everything humanity had built in a desperate gamble based on theoretical science. How confident are our scientists in this counterfrequency theory? She asked Hayes. 60%, he admitted. Maybe 70 on a good day. 60%. In 11 hours, they would either save 17 star systems or accidentally help destroy them. Either become the heroes who stopped the greatest genocide in history, or the fools who enabled it. Admiral Chun had commanded fleets, made life and death decisions for thousands of soldiers, and carried the weight of humanity's expansion to the stars. But she had never faced a choice like this. Begin preparations for the counter-frequency broadcast, she ordered. And may whatever gods are listening forgive us if we're wrong. The power coupling on Earth's largest fusion reactor screamed in protest as engineers pushed it beyond every safety protocol ever written. Dr. Amanda Cross wiped sweat from her forehead as she watched energy output numbers climb into ranges that made her stomach churn. Around her, the most brilliant minds in human space worked with desperate efficiency to create something that had never existed before, a galaxy-spanning transmission array capable of broadcasting a frequency that might save 17 star systems. Power levels at 112% of recommended maximum, called out Engineer Martinez, his voice tight with concern. Containment fields are holding, but the margin is getting thin. Push it higher, Cross ordered. We need every erg we can generate. 6 hours. That's how long they had to maintain this impossible transmission across distances that light itself took years to traverse. 6 hours to broadcast a theoretical counterfrequency that existed only in equations and desperate hope. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on every human-controlled world and station. The captured hegemony facilities were being pushed beyond their design limits, their alien technology forced to work in harmony with human systems despite fundamental incompatibilities. On Kepler Prime, Admiral Chun coordinated the most complex technical operation in galactic history while watching countdown timers that showed exactly how much time remained before the hegemony implemented their final protocol. Status report from Sector 7, called Captain Torres, his usual calm cracking under pressure. The quantum resonance array is online, but showing harmonic fluctuations. Dr. Singh thinks she can stabilize it, but it's going to require constant adjustment. Sector 12 reports full power output, added another officer. But their primary coupling is running at critical temperature. They estimate they can maintain current levels for 7 hours before catastrophic failure. It has to be enough, Chen said, though privately she wondered if anything they did would be enough. The scale of what they were attempting was beyond all precedent. Broadcasting a coordinated signal across 17 different star systems, maintaining precise frequency synchronization across light years of space, doing it all with hastily modified equipment that was never designed for this purpose. Admiral, Dr. Warren approached with a data pad, her expression grim. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of hegemony leadership. I don't think they're going to wait for their original deadline. What do you mean? Supreme Overlord Carthex is a strategist, not a politician. If he suspects we're planning something, he won't hesitate to accelerate the timeline. My analysis suggests he might implement the final protocol early, just to prevent whatever countermeasure he thinks we're preparing. The words hit Chun like a physical blow. Their entire plan was based on having exactly enough time to power up and synchronize the transmission array. If the hegemony triggered their stellar weapons early, everything would collapse. How early are we talking? Could be hours. Could be minutes. There's no way to know. Chen looked at the countdown display. 4 hours and 17 minutes until the original deadline. But if Warren was right, they might not even have that much time. Communications, give me Director Hayes on priority channel. Hayes appeared in the hologram, his face showing the strain of coordinating humanity's most desperate gamble. Behind him, Chun could see the massive quantum computers that were calculating the precise frequency modulations needed for their theoretical counterwave. Sarah, we're as ready as we're ever going to be, he said without preamble. The math checks out, the equipment is online, and we've got power levels that would make a supernova jealous. But I'll be honest with you, if this doesn't work, we're not going to get a second chance. Dr. Warren thinks the hegemony might trigger early. How quickly can we implement the broadcast? We need at least another hour to complete frequency synchronization across all sites. Without proper sync, we might as well be shouting into the void. 1 hour minimum. Chun felt the weight of impossible decisions crushing down on her. Wait for proper synchronization and risk the hegemony triggering first, or start early with inadequate preparation and almost certainly fail. Admiral, Lieutenant Park's voice cut through her thoughts. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy fluctuations from hegemony space. Something's happening. The main display shifted to show energy readings from the Dominion system. Power output was spiking beyond anything they had previously recorded, climbing toward levels that could only mean one thing. They're starting the ignition sequence, Torres said quietly. Chun stared at the readings as they climbed steadily higher. The hegemony wasn't waiting for their deadline. They were implementing the final protocol now, while humanity was still struggling to coordinate their countermeasure. Director Hayes, she said, her voice carrying the weight of ultimate command. We're out of time. Begin to broadcast now. Sarah, we're not ready. The synchronization is incomplete. The probability of success drops to maybe 20%. 20% is better than 0. Do it. Across the galaxy, human and captured hegemony facilities began pouring unimaginable amounts of energy into the quantum transmission array. On Earth, fusion reactors pushed past every safety limit. On Mars, the entire planetary power grid was rerouted through a single transmission node. On Kepler Prime, captured hegemony technology screamed in protest as it was forced to work in ways its creators never intended. The energy required was staggering. In the first 30 seconds, humanity consumed more power than their entire civilization had used in the previous decade. Reactor cores pushed beyond critical limits. Superconductive cables carrying currents that should have been impossible. Quantum field generators working at frequencies that made reality itself vibrate like a struck bell. Frequency broadcast initiated, Hayes reported, his voice tight with concentration. We're maintaining transmission across 14 target systems. 3 systems are showing sync failures, but we're compensating. Chen watched the tactical display as their counter-frequency raced across space at the speed of light. But light was too slow. The distance to some target systems meant their signal would take hours to arrive, and they had no idea how much time remained before the hegemony stellar weapons activated. Admiral, we're receiving signals from the target systems, called an operator. The populations are being warned about possible stellar instability. They know something's coming. Chen imagined trillions of sentient beings looking up at their stars and wondering if they were about to die. Children who would never grow up, civilizations that would never mature, entire worlds that might be reduced to expanding clouds of plasma in the next few hours. Power levels holding steady across all nodes, reported Torres. But we're getting structural warnings from half our facilities. This level of energy output isn't sustainable for 6 hours. It has to be, Chen said, because the alternative is unthinkable. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of crisis management and desperate improvisation. Reactor cores were pushed beyond every limit, safety systems were bypassed, and equipment failures cascaded across human space. On Titan, an entire fusion facility shut down catastrophically, requiring emergency rerouting through backup systems. On Proxima Centauri, quantum field generators began destabilizing local space-time, creating gravitational anomalies that threatened to tear the station apart. But somehow, impossibly, the transmission continued. Dr. Singh reports success in Sector 7. Torres called out during a brief lull in the crisis reports. The harmonic fluctuations are stabilizing. She thinks the frequency synchronization is actually improving as the broadcast continues. For the first time in hours, Chun felt a spark of hope. Maybe their desperate gamble was actually working. Then, alarms began sounding across the command center. Admiral, we're detecting massive gravitational disturbances in the hegemony core systems, reported the sensor operator, his voice climbing toward panic. The energy signatures are, I don't know how to describe this. It's like space itself is being torn apart. The main display shifted to show the Dominion system, where the hegemony high command was located. What Shin saw there defied comprehension. The system's star was pulsing with unnatural rhythms, its corona expanding and contracting in ways that should have been impossible. Massive flares erupted from the stellar surface, each one carrying more energy than most civilizations used in a century. Are they testing the stellar ignition weapons on their own star? Asked Torres. No, Dr. Warren said, her voice filled with horrified understanding. They're not testing anything. This is their contingency plan. If they can't destroy the rebellion, they're going to destroy themselves and take as much of the galaxy with them as possible. Chin stared at the impossible sight of the hegemony's home star being driven toward instability. How many people are in that system? Conservative estimate? 50 billion. Possibly more. 50 billion lives, and the hegemony leadership was willing to sacrifice all of them rather than accept defeat. The scale of the madness was beyond anything Chun had imagined possible. Director Hayes, she called. Are you seeing this? We're seeing it, Sarah. And our theoretical physicists are going crazy trying to understand what we're looking at. Whatever the hegemony is doing to their star, it's not following any known laws of physics. Can we stop it with our counter-frequency? Unknown. The quantum resonance we're broadcasting was designed to neutralize stellar ignition devices, not whatever this is. We might be able to help stabilize the star, or we might accidentally make the situation worse. Shin found herself facing another impossible choice. Continue broadcasting to the 17 target systems and ignore the hegemony's home star, or try to help stabilize Dominion and risk the failure of their original mission. What would happen if their star goes nova? She asked. It's not just any star, Hayes replied grimly. Dominion is a massive blue giant. If it goes supernova, the explosion will sterilize everything within 50 light years. That includes 4 of our target systems and approximately 30 inhabited worlds. 100 billion lives minimum, possibly more. The hegemony wasn't just committing suicide. They were trying to take a significant portion of the galaxy with them. Can we split the transmission? Target both the original systems and Dominion. Not without dropping power levels below effective thresholds. We'd probably fail to save any of the targets. Chen looked at the tactical display, showing energy readings from across human space. They had already pushed their power generation beyond every safety limit. Equipment was failing, reactors were destabilizing, and they still had 3 hours left in the original transmission window. Adding another target to the broadcast would require power they simply didn't have. Unless, Director, what if we redirected everything to Dominion? Focus all our power on stopping the supernova. You're talking about abandoning the original 17 systems to their fate. The hegemony stellar weapons would still trigger. But if Dominion goes supernova, we lose those 4 target systems anyway, plus dozens more. We might save more lives by preventing the bigger catastrophe. The silence on the communication channel stretched for long seconds as Hayes consulted with his team of scientists. When he returned, his expression was grim. Sarah, my people are telling me this is the most horrible decision anyone should ever have to make. But mathematically, you're right. We could potentially save more lives by stopping the supernova. Shin closed her eyes and tried to imagine explaining this decision to the families of those she was choosing to abandon. Trillions of people in 13 star systems, condemned to death so that trillions more might live. No, she said finally. We don't abandon anyone. We find another way. Admiral, there is no other way. We don't have the power. Then, we make the power. Chen turned to her engineering staff. How quickly can we implement emergency power taps from every captured hegemony facility? Ma'am, most of those systems aren't designed to interface with human technology. The incompatibility issues alone would take days to resolve. We don't have days. We have hours. What's the fastest possible solution? Captain Torres stepped forward. We could try overloading their systems and channeling the resulting energy discharge through modified transmission nodes. It would probably destroy the equipment, but it might give us enough power for split transmission. Probably destroy? Definitely destroy. And there's a good chance it could kill anyone nearby when the systems fail. Chun looked around the command center at the faces of her staff. Every one of them was a volunteer, people who had signed up to fight the hegemony knowing the risks. Now she was asking them to risk not just their lives, but the lives of every human in captured hegemony facilities. Send the word, she ordered. All captured facilities are to implement emergency overload procedures. We're going to split our transmission and target both the original systems and Dominion simultaneously. Admiral, Dr. Warren said quietly, the power surge from overloading hegemony facilities could create feedback loops through our quantum array. We might accidentally tear holes in space-time itself. Will it work? I have no idea. The physics involved are so far beyond current understanding that we're basically making it up as we go along. Chun looked at the countdown timer. 2 hours and 37 minutes remaining in their transmission window. Around the galaxy, stellar ignition weapons were charging toward activation. A supernova was building in the hegemony's home system, and humanity was about to attempt something that could either save countless lives or accidentally destroy reality itself. Do it, she ordered. And across the galaxy, human engineers began deliberately destroying the most advanced technology they had ever captured, all in the desperate hope that the resulting chaos might somehow create salvation. The universe held its breath. Across 17 star systems, ancient weapons that had slept for millions of years awakened with the fury of dying gods. The stellar ignition devices, artifacts of a civilization so old their name had been forgotten, began their terrible work. Deep within the cores of 17 different stars, quantum fields twisted reality into impossible configurations. Nuclear fusion rates spiked beyond comprehension. Stellar magnetic fields writhed like serpents made of pure energy. On the observation deck of Kepler Prime, Admiral Chun watched readouts that showed the death of worlds. The power levels required for humanity's counterfrequency had forced them to abandon all pretense of stealth. Every human facility, every secret base, every covert installation was broadcasting at maximum power, turning the galaxy into a maze of intersecting quantum fields that made navigation hazardous and communication nearly impossible. Status report from all nodes, she commanded, though her voice was barely audible over the harmonic vibrations that were making the entire station shake. Earth reports catastrophic failures in reactors 7 and 12, called Captain Torres, reading from displays that flickered with interference. They're compensating with backup systems, but estimates suggest total power grid collapse within 90 minutes. Mars Colony has successfully overloaded 3 hegemony facilities, added another operator. They're channeling the energy discharge through modified transmission arrays, but the feedback is creating what their chief engineer describes as localized space-time hiccups. What does that mean? Gravity fluctuations, temporal distortions, and, in one case, a small region where cause and effect appear to be running backward. Chun rubbed her temples, feeling the beginning of a headache that was probably being caused by the quantum fields interfering with her neural patterns. Around her, the command center was filled with displays showing impossible things. Stars that pulsed with artificial rhythms, space-time distortions that created visual paradoxes, and energy readings that exceeded the theoretical limits of matter itself. Director Hayes, please tell me you have good news. Hayes appeared in the hologram, his image flickering with quantum static. Behind him, Chun could see banks of computers that were literally smoking from the strain of calculating real-time modifications to their transmission frequency. The counter-frequency is working, he said, though his expression remained grim. We're successfully neutralizing the stellar ignition devices in 12 of the 17 target systems. But, Sarah, what we're doing is causing side effects that we never anticipated. What kind of side effects? We're not just preventing the stars from going nova, we're stabilizing them beyond their natural parameters. Some of the target stars are showing signs of increased lifespan, enhanced energy output, and improved stellar stability. We're accidentally making them better than they were before. Under other circumstances, Chun might have been amazed by this revelation. Humanity had inadvertently developed stellar engineering technology that could improve entire solar systems. But, right now, she was more concerned with immediate survival. What about the 5 systems where the counter-frequency isn't working? That's the bad news. 3 of those systems are too far away for our signal to be effective at current power levels. The stellar ignition devices are proceeding normally, and those stars will go nova within the next hour. Chun felt the weight of 3 entire star systems pressing down on her chest. Billions of lives that they couldn't save, worlds that would be reduced to expanding spheres of plasma despite everything they were doing. And the other 2 systems? Those are the really problematic ones. The stellar ignition devices in those systems are malfunctioning due to interference from our quantum broadcast. Instead of triggering controlled supernovas, they're creating something that our physicists are calling cascade stellar collapse, which means the stars aren't exploding, they're imploding. And the gravitational effects are spreading to nearby star systems. We might accidentally trigger a chain reaction that could destabilize an entire spiral arm of the galaxy. Chen stared at the tactical display showing the 2 problematic systems. Instead of the clean energy signatures of a supernova, sensors showed gravitational anomalies that bent space-time into configurations that hurt to look at. Matter was falling into the collapsed stars at near-light speed, creating accretion disks that glowed with the fury of creation itself. How do we stop a cascade stellar collapse? We're working on it, but honestly, Sarah, we're in completely uncharted territory. The physics involved are so exotic that our computers are having trouble modeling what's happening, let alone predicting how to fix it. Before Chun could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. The main tactical display shifted to show the Dominion system, where the hegemony's home star was undergoing changes that defied every known law of stellar physics. The blue giant that had warmed the hegemony capital for millennia was no longer blue. Massive coronal discharges had changed its spectrum to a brilliant white that pulsed with artificial rhythms. Solar flares erupted in geometric patterns that could only be the result of intelligent control. The star itself had become a weapon, and it was building toward an explosion that would sterilize everything within 50 light years. The hegemony stellar manipulation is entering final phase, reported the sensor operator. Based on energy buildup rates, we estimate detonation in approximately 47 minutes. Status of our counter-frequency targeting Dominion: partial success. We're disrupting their stellar manipulation, but not stopping it completely. The star is still building toward supernova, just more slowly than the hegemony intended. Chen looked at the countdown timers scattered across the command center displays. 47 minutes until the Dominion supernova, 68 minutes until the first targeted star systems went nova, 90 minutes until complete power grid failure, and an unknown amount of time before the cascade stellar collapses created a galactic catastrophe. They were fighting on too many fronts, trying to prevent too many disasters simultaneously. Something had to give. Director Hayes, I need options. Real options, not theoretical possibilities. Hayes consulted with someone off-screen before responding. We have 3 choices, none of them good. First, we can maintain current operations and hope we can stabilize everything before our power systems fail. Probability of success, maybe 10%. Second option, we abandon the distant target systems and focus all available power on preventing the cascade collapses. We save the galaxy from a chain reaction, but condemn 3 star systems to destruction. Probability of success, 60%. Third option. Hayes paused, his expression showing the weight of what he was about to suggest. We do something that our physicists are calling the quantum reset. Instead of fighting all these stellar disasters individually, we trigger a galaxy-wide quantum field pulse that essentially resets stellar physics to baseline parameters. That sounds too good to be true. It is. The power requirements would drain every available energy source in human space, including life support systems. We'd save the stars, but we'd probably kill everyone in the process. Chen looked around the command center at the faces of her staff. Engineers were working frantically to maintain failing systems. Communications operators were coordinating with facilities across the galaxy as they pushed beyond every safety limit. Medical personnel were treating people affected by the quantum field fluctuations. Everyone was giving everything they had to prevent the greatest catastrophe in galactic history. There has to be another way, she said, though even as she spoke the words, she knew they were born of desperation rather than logic. Admiral, Dr. Warren approached with a datapad, her expression carrying something that might have been hope. I've been analyzing the psychological profiles of hegemony leadership, specifically Supreme Overlord Carthex. I think there might be a fourth option. I'm listening. Everything the hegemony has done, including their decision to trigger stellar disasters, has been based on the assumption that they have no choice but victory or death. But what if we could offer them a third alternative? What kind of alternative? Surrender with dignity. A negotiated peace that allows them to maintain some authority while ending their campaign of galactic conquest. Chen stared at Warren as if she had suggested dancing with supernovas. Doctor, they're currently trying to destroy 50 billion people in their own home system rather than accept defeat. I don't think they're in a mood for negotiation. That's exactly why it might work. Carthex is a strategist, not a fanatic. Right now, he believes his only options are total victory or taking the galaxy down with him. But if we could demonstrate that surrender doesn't mean execution or humiliation, you want me to call the Supreme Overlord of the hegemony and offer him terms while his home star is building towards supernova? I want you to show him that humans fight differently than everyone else the hegemony has ever encountered. We don't conquer for the sake of conquest. We don't rule through fear. When we win, we try to build something better. Chen looked at the tactical displays showing the mounting disasters across the galaxy. Stars building toward artificial supernovas, cascade collapses that threaten galactic stability, quantum fields that were tearing holes in reality itself. In the middle of the greatest crisis in cosmic history, Dr. Warren was suggesting they try diplomacy. Even if Carthex agreed to negotiate, how would that stop the stellar disasters? Because those disasters are being controlled by hegemony technology. If Carthex ordered the systems shut down, the immediate threats would end. And you think he would do that? I think he might, if we offered him something more valuable than mutual destruction. Chun considered the proposal as reports continued flooding in from across the galaxy. Power systems failing, quantum fields destabilizing, stars dying in ways that violated the fundamental laws of physics. They were rapidly approaching the point where all their technological solutions would be irrelevant. Maybe it was time to try something completely different. Communications. Open a priority channel to Hegemony High Command. Tell them Admiral Chun requests immediate conference with Supreme Overlord Carthex. Ma'am, they're in the middle of implementing the final protocol. The chances they'll accept a communication from us. Tell them we're prepared to discuss terms for human surrender. The communication request went out across the quantum static that was making interstellar communication nearly impossible. For long minutes, there was no response. Then, surprisingly, the main display activated with the image of Supreme Overlord Carthex himself. The alien leader appeared smaller than Chun had expected, though that might have been an effect of the quantum interference distorting his image. His obsidian carapace reflected the amber lighting of the Hegemony High Command Chamber, and his 12 eyes focused on Chun with unsettling intensity. Admiral Chun, he said in perfect standard, you wish to discuss surrender while your people are actively sabotaging our stellar operations. I wish to discuss an end to this madness before we destroy the galaxy, Chun replied. You're trying to trigger supernovas. We're trying to prevent them, and the interaction between our technologies is creating cascade effects that could kill everyone. Perhaps that would be for the best. Better a dead galaxy than one where the natural order has been overturned. Is that really what you believe? That the universe would be better as an empty void than as a place where different species cooperate instead of conquering each other? Carthex was quiet for a moment, his alien features unreadable. Around him, Chen could see other hegemony leaders watching the conversation with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. What terms do you propose? He asked finally. Complete cessation of stellar manipulation activities in exchange for the establishment of neutral zones where hegemony forces can withdraw safely. No pursuit, no retribution, no attempts to hunt down your remaining personnel. And then? Then, we establish a new galactic order based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Species that want to join the hegemony can do so freely. Those that prefer independence can have it. Impossible. The galaxy requires order, structure, unified command. Without the hegemony, there will be chaos. Will there? Or will there be something better? Chun gestured to the displays around her, showing human and former hegemony personnel working together to prevent galactic catastrophe. Look at what we're accomplishing right now. Former enemies collaborating to save lives, sharing technology, solving problems that neither group could handle alone. That's not chaos. That's evolution. Carthex studied the images for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been uncertainty. Even if I agreed to your terms, the stellar ignition devices cannot simply be shut down. The process has progressed too far. The stars will die regardless of what we do now. Not necessarily, Chen said. Our quantum physicists believe that a coordinated shutdown of all stellar manipulation systems, combined with our counter-frequency broadcasts, could stabilize the affected stars. But it has to be done simultaneously, and it has to be done now. You're asking me to trust human science with the lives of 50 billion people in the Dominion system. I'm asking you to trust human intentions. We don't want to rule over the hegemony. We just want a choice to live free. Another long pause. Chun could see Carthex consulting with other members of the High Command, their alien features animated in what was clearly intense debate. Finally, he returned his attention to the communication. If I agree to coordinate the shutdown of stellar operations, and your quantum frequency successfully prevents the supernova events, what assurance do I have that humans will honor their commitments? The same assurance you've had for 3,000 years, Chen replied. Our actions. We could have executed your captured personnel, but instead we've treated them with dignity. We could have targeted civilian populations, but instead we focused on military assets. We could have demanded unconditional surrender, but instead we're offering negotiated peace. And if the shutdown fails? If the stars die anyway? Then, at least we die trying to save lives instead of trying to destroy them. Carthex closed his eyes, all 12 of them, in what Chen recognized as a gesture of deep contemplation. When he opened them again, his decision was clear. Very well, Admiral Chun. I will order the immediate shutdown of all stellar manipulation systems. But understand this. If your counter-frequency fails to prevent the supernovas, the responsibility for those deaths will rest with humanity. I accept that responsibility. The communication ended, leaving Chun alone with her command staff and the weight of what they had just committed to attempt. Around them, the quantum interference began to subside as hegemony stellar manipulation systems powered down. Energy readings from the Dominion system showed the blue giant slowly returning to normal parameters. Director Hayes, Chen called. The hegemony is shutting down their stellar operations. Can we coordinate our counter-frequency to stabilize all the affected stars? We could try, Sarah, but we're still looking at power requirements that will drain everything we have. If this works, humanity is going to be running on emergency power for months. If it doesn't work, emergency power will be the least of our concerns. For the next 6 hours, Chun watched as humanity performed the greatest feat of stellar engineering in galactic history. Across 17 star systems, carefully modulated quantum frequencies gently guided dying stars.